Yeah, hello everyone. Welcome to the Let's Talk Internet Computer podcast. I'm Javier Arroyo Ferrer, a marketing contractor at DFINITY Foundation and a passionate of internet computer blockchain, the first real world computer. And today, in our fifth episode, we're having with us Paul Young, the founder of CodeBase Labs. Many thanks, Mr. Paul Young, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes, awesome. For people who don't know much about you, could you please just introduce yourself? Who is Paul and what are you doing now?
Yeah, so my name is Paul Young. I used to work at DFINITY on the SDK team. That was about 4 years ago. And since the network launched, I've been working on something called CodeBase. And it's you could kind of think of it like a decentralized GitHub. Yeah.
Right. Awesome. And yeah, I see. Like I also read your web page, paulyoung.wordpress.com, and I see like you work in different projects a long time ago. Maybe you started in 2008 or before. As like two different sides or two different jobs. One is more like side of the software developer or engineering, and also a designer. I see you working in a different projects as a Bay Game, Elm native logo, Function Outs, Cocoa Flow, the grid, Statusfy, a lot of different projects. Yeah, can you explain more about? It's like more on the designer side, or this is like a hobby, or what is exactly this project?
Yeah, I guess most of those are just side projects. And as well as trying to write software for them, I would come up with like the icon for the Mac app that I was working on, or just some branding, or I'd be working on an open source project and they'd say, you know, it'd be cool to have a logo or something, and I would come up with something. And I've always enjoyed doing that, and not just the design aspect of it, but the branding aspect as well. Kind of what is this thing that we're working on? What does it represent? What are its values? And how do you sort of distill that down into some imagery? And yeah, I've kind of enjoyed the challenge of doing that with CodeBase as well. But I guess this all really comes from, I had a bit of a mixed background, just doing software and video editing and graphic design. And I've still kind of kept hold of some of those interests and passions and try and kind of bring it together in whatever I'm working on. And I actually first got into writing software because at university, I don't have a computer science degree. I have a music degree. And I was in a band and I wanted a website for my band. So I figured out how to build a website and how to design it and those kind of things. And that was sort of like my journey into writing software.
Wow, nice. Also, you are like a music producer?
Well, my degree title is digital music creation. And there was a lot of aspects of like traditional music theory and composition and orchestration. And at one point I thought I might want to sort of do that for a living, but I got a taste of programming when I was at university, because although it was a Bachelor of Arts and it was a music degree, it was in the School of Computing. So I was still learning sort of fundamental computer science things along the way. And it was this mix of art and science. And once I got a taste of writing software, I was like, I think I want to do this instead. So I sort of tried to pivot to do that.
Awesome. Wow, it's pretty cool. Super interesting your story, no? The first year and how you become to a software developer or more related with the IT or something like create, right? Code or create apps, or that's cool. Yeah. And also you work as in like big companies. I see on LinkedIn you work also in Oracle, Arista. This is like just like full-time jobs before, like as a software developer, or?
Yeah, so I never actually worked at Oracle, but I'm from England originally, and I moved to the US about 10 years ago to work at a startup in New York City. And it was a sort of loyalty and engagement platform that ended up doing really well, and it got acquired by Oracle a couple of years ago. But I never actually worked there. I'd left by that point in time. But that was sort of my start in working at early stage companies. And I basically went from working there as one of the first employees to being the first employee at the next company, and then being early at a company after that, and just going from startups in New York, and then in California, I moved to San Francisco. And then I went to a network security startup just because I was really interested in some of the technology they were using, and they kind of convinced me that they had something different to all these other things that were out there that were claiming they were the best. It might sound kind of familiar if you're into sort of, Web3 space. There are all these things that are saying they do these great things, and it's hard to know who's, being truthful or who really has something interesting. So I went to work there and learned a lot, grew a lot, made some great friends. And during that time, I kind of left there and I went to DFINITY and worked on what became the SDK. And then I actually left DFINITY and I went back to that same company and worked there for a few more years. And then they got acquired by Arista.
Okay. And how it was the experience working in DFINITY? You work in Palo Alto, right? In California.
Yeah, I was in the Palo Alto office. So this was before there was a San Francisco office or a Zurich office.
Yeah.
And it felt to me like it was still a pretty small group of people, and
it was the earliest stages on DFINITY, right? It's just when DFINITY like start in 2019 or?
I think I was there in 2018, sort of early on, and I got the impression it had been going for a couple of years at least by then, but things were still being figured out. And I went there because I was intrigued by, I wasn't really interested in blockchain or Web3 or anything like that. And I'd had some experience with Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I was a bit underwhelmed by it, and thought most of what was around at the time was, I don't know, a little bit sketchy or something along those lines. And for some reason, DFINITY seemed different to me, and I saw it more of just a next generation computing platform, and that's what attracted me about it. And I tried to sort of keep that perspective throughout my time there. But I kind of went there thinking I was going to go and build apps and use the platform and be one of the early users and give feedback. But I found when I got there, it was so early that there wasn't really much to build apps with. And I ended up sort of building the thing to build the thing. And and that evolved into some developer tools and what became the first SDK. I think I wrote the first version of DFX. And it was my first Rust project, and we already had some other like command line tools before that in different languages, but we sort of said, well, it'd be nice to launch the SDK on this date, and we kind of really need to have a new command line tool, and it needs to be in Rust. And I'd never written Rust before, and I just sort of did it in about 2 weeks, and that was like the first version. I was just thrown in the deep end. But it was very exciting. It was it felt like we were sort of pioneers, or and all that comes along with it, the excitement, but also sometimes the frustration, because you're literally doing something no one's ever done before, and you can't just go to Stack Overflow and get some tips. And sometimes my job involved just really trying to make the simplest thing work from end to end, even though I knew it wasn't possible, and sort of getting as far as I could get, and then giving feedback to the rest of the organization and saying, I tried to do this and I got this far this time, and we don't seem to be able to get past that, and we need a solution. So I feel like, although that was a little bit frustrating at times, it seemed like it was adding value, and I think it probably influenced what became the Internet Computer Specification document. And and eventually we got there. We got to like a hello world from a web browser talking to a replica, and we're able to like quickly from there build other apps. We built an app where you could kind of pretend you were going to ship produce around the country and fulfill orders and things like that. And it didn't look very pretty, but it was just exciting that it actually worked, and you could use it, and it was real.
Yeah. And then in April of this year, you took the decision to start your own project, and you founded CodeBase Labs. Mainly, CodeBase is a decentralized alternative to GitHub, right, or the other repositories at GitLab or Bitbucket. How it works, CodeBase, and what is the advantages over the other repositories?
Well, how it works at a high level is, if you already use a Git client and you're used to using GitHub, or at least this is the, partly the vision, partly how it works right now, is instead of just saying, I want to interact with github.com, you would interact with codebase.org instead. And your workflow should pretty much remain the same, except you get the benefits of the Internet Computer as a platform I'm building on. So the properties that it has that might be desirable would be certain things like it's supposed to be resistant to natural disasters or wars, or certain governments deciding they want to turn off your servers, just because the way you could have nodes in the subnet that your application's on being in different geographical locations and jurisdictions. And for me, as a person writing the software, I don't really want to have to think about that stuff. I'd rather just leave that to the network and the protocol, and sort of have some amount of trust that I'm satisfied with, that it's sort of sufficiently decentralized. But as a user, you might appreciate that if you think things could progress into the future, where perhaps you're not as happy being hosted on GitHub, which is owned by Microsoft, and letting them be the single decider about, I don't know, how the platform evolves, the things that they do, the people that they engage with, the features they add, or whether or not your software is allowed to be on their platform, or are they just going to say, no, sorry, we don't allow that. So kind of embracing this bigger idea of open internet services that could be owned by the people using them, but kind of taking that a step further and saying, if you have a software project, you could do that for your own software project. So by putting your software on CodeBase, you could then hand over ownership or control for the future of your software project to the community that's used to it. And so you're giving them a voice in what they're doing, and they can potentially have tokens that they could vote with to represent sort of those desires and how they'd like things to progress. But also just taking the burden off software maintainers in a couple of ways. One of them being recent studies have shown that I think more than 60% of people who maintain open source software are just considering quitting and giving up because they have other things going on in their life, or they're just burned out, or they're dealing with almost like an entitlement attitude from the people using the software. They're filing issues and saying, this is broken and you need to fix it and it's affecting my business or something. But there's no sort of culture of them compensating anybody for it. So something that I'm hoping to address with CodeBase is set up a system where if you have a software project and you have a community using it, you're kind of giving up ownership and control, and you're giving them a voice in the way it progresses. But in return, as the person writing the software, you would want to be adequately compensated for that. So the details on that are still to be worked out, but you can imagine something like bounties or people pledging, like, I really want to see this bug fixed, or I want to see this feature implemented. And if as a maintainer of the software, you can see pretty clearly, well, if I fix that bug and I take the time, then I'm going to get some reward in return. And ultimately that would end up being equating to a monetary reward. And that really tries to address some things I've observed from just working in open source for years. Things like critical pieces of infrastructure for the internet being maintained by like 2 or 3 people in their spare time on weekends, or they're fixing these bugs that have cost people millions of dollars, and they're like struggling to spend the time on it because they also work, and this is just like a hobby thing for them. But on the flip side, there's like big tech companies who are using all of this software and extracting all the value, and the people who are providing it are not seeing any of that value back to them. So
the corporation exploited, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the existing platforms are really just sort of perpetuating this. I don't feel like they're going to ever change or provide real solutions to this. The most popular JavaScript projects that I've looked into on GitHub, for example, are struggling to meet their sponsorship goals. But I think with the right sort of incentive mechanisms, this could be a benefit to everyone. Because I've been on the other side of this when I've been using some open source software and I thought, I really need this bug to be fixed, but I just don't have any means of influencing the people maintaining it. But if I could provide an incentive and say, myself or my employer at the time or whoever would be willing to pay for this to get fixed, and perhaps other people could contribute as well, then I think it becomes a lot easier to justify as somebody who's working on these things.
Yeah, for sure. It's a way for like go further and try to do the best in any program and any DApp, or that's pretty cool. The rewards also, it's not for the people like create code on CodeBase. Also, it's for contributors, for reviews, documentation, support. That's something really cool. And how it works? It works as a tokens, or how the people like contribute to the code base to improve code base, or review or support the different languages, or whatever. How they can like get the rewards?
Yeah, so I think you touched on 2 or 3 things that I want to mention there. So yeah, I'm not just targeting people who are writing software, but there is, I think, a gap in people who will maybe just review software, like maybe they're just auditing it. And some people would be really good at that, and maybe they don't see that as something that's being served by existing platforms right now, but CodeBase could facilitate that. Because I think if you're writing security critical software and you want to get some eyes on it, sometimes it can be hard to get people who are capable to get eyes on it and sort of convince them to spend the time reviewing your code. But if they have some sort of incentive to do that, then I'm hoping that would change. But also, people who are providing support or writing documentation, I feel like they're a little bit the unsung heroes at times. And that can just mean it's harder to find people, and then documentation can be lacking, or people who are answering questions about how software works, a particular software project, those questions are coming up, but maybe they're going unanswered. So, I mean, if you could imagine that when you're on Stack Overflow, for example, if you're responding and providing high quality answers and solutions to people's questions, if that turned into real money, then there's probably more of an incentive for people to do that and for the users to get the answers they need. So like I said, the details of this are still to be worked out, but you could maybe imagine something like what the NNS does today, except every proposal that would be made would be like bug report, feature request, documentation request, or like support ticket or something like that. And perhaps you could have something like, you know, if you fill a bug report and it's just low quality or it's spam, there's some penalty involved there. But if you create a high quality bug report and it has all the information that's needed to reproduce it, and that leads to somebody saying like, yeah, this is a verified bug, maybe there's some reward there for the person who filed it. And then you could go even further and say, well, the person who fixes it could also take some share in the reward. But that might be dependent on enough people saying like, yeah, this is really important for us. We want to see it fixed. We want to see that be the priority. And again, this is to be worked out, but some indication of how important it is. Maybe it's voting with tokens, maybe it's pledging ICP, to sort of indicate and sort of put your money where your mouth is almost, rather than someone saying like, yeah, we really need this, somebody working on it, and then, I don't know, not getting paid. We sort of want to make that not possible, I think. But then how people could improve CodeBase potentially. So what I want to do is make CodeBase hosted on CodeBase. So right now, all my code for CodeBase is on GitHub. When I get to a certain point, I want to not use GitHub anymore, and I want to use CodeBase itself. And I think that would be a nice milestone to reach, to open source CodeBase. But also it will be me using it every day to build itself and feeling all the pain points and frustrations. And at that point, or you know, when these mechanisms come into play, CodeBase itself would be subject to the same features and the same mechanisms. So I could potentially hand over control of CodeBase to a community of people, and then they could have a voice, they could have influence in the roadmap or what gets implemented, what gets fixed. But they could also do that for their own projects. And it doesn't need to be a Web3 project. It could be an iPhone app. It could be anything. They could potentially opt into these features.
Great, awesome. And how many people work now in the team? It's like, what phase is the project now? You mentioned about the open source code base. Maybe it's a good milestone. Now the code is in GitHub, but what is now exactly CodeBase? What is the phase? It's like early phases. It's like something like start a few months ago, or you have now like a strong team, or how is exactly now CodeBase?
Yeah, it's just me. I've pretty much done everything, and
wow.
And had some advice from people that I trust. But
you have also
yeah,
the DFINITY and Internet Computer Support, right?
Yeah, I have a grant from the DFINITY Foundation. So that's what allowed me back in April to leave my job and go full-time work on this. And that's really when the work got started. And I feel like I've made good progress since then. I have a demo that I've shared in some developer discords and that kind of thing, but it's just not enabled for people right now. If you go to the website codebase.org and you sign up, you're just joining the waiting list. And potentially soon I could enable the demo for people to try out themselves. What it lets you do is you pick a username and enter your information, and then you can create a hello world repository. You can put in your own commit message, and then you can clone the repository, using the command line, or if you use GitHub Desktop, you can use that. I've used some iPhone apps that let you clone GitHub repos. It works on there too. But that's sort of like the level that I was at when I announced what I was doing. I've been more recently working on things that are going to enable people to just create their own repositories and push their own code. And so it's still really early. There's still work to do there. And I'm hoping to get there soon. I think there are some use cases for just Git works on the IC without it being, GitHub with web UIs and all the features that come with that. There could be things like decentralized registries for code and packages. If you're a static site builder on the IC, perhaps you could use CodeBase. I'll probably release a GitHub action so that every time you push your code to GitHub and it builds, you can just mirror it. You could push it to CodeBase as well. So there are like incremental steps that could be taken to get people involved in using it before, full featured UI to try and be on par with GitHub. But I'm working on it.
Awesome. Yeah. Also, the rewards for contribute like people is like something disruptive. This is something unique. Get rewards for like people contribute to the code base to improve code base. That's something pretty cool. It's like a revolution. And now you receive a grant for DFINITY. How CodeBase can take advantage from the blockchain, from the internet to computer blockchain? It's like something about like gas reverse fees, or about the pure decentralization, or for you, why you choose internet computer? Just why? Because you worked before in DFINITY, or because you know other blockchains and you think this is the best one to do your project? How you choose internet computer blockchain? And why?
Yeah, I mean, I can't ignore my experience with the internet computer and DFINITY, but honestly, I'd spent some time away from DFINITY and the IC before the network launched, and things had changed a lot. So it was almost like starting from scratch. Not quite, but a lot had changed and a lot of things were improved. I think why the internet computer, I don't really care that it's a blockchain. That's not really important to me. I see it as a computing platform that has properties that are desirable to me. And I think some of those I've talked about just in terms of, I think the vision for availability across different regions and hopefully scalability as well. And I don't think we're quite there yet, but I'm optimistic. But also just seems like I can build what I want to build. I think it's an interesting use case, and I get some of these properties for free. And then it would be easier to add in some of the more interesting features around enabling people to sort of get paid for working on software. And I just think there's such a great team behind it. They're not only sort of highly competent and great at what they do, the best in the world, literally, some of them. The people I've interacted with and sort of still have relationships with, they're just great people. And I sort of really enjoyed the process of trying to do this and getting help and trying to figure it out. The reverse gas fees is a big thing, I suppose, because to anybody using CodeBase, it's just another website. They don't really know anything about it. And I've sort of tried not to put things in your face like, blockchain or Web3 or IC or that kind of thing. Maybe there'll be a place for that. I still think I need to figure out how to let people use this and have CodeBase pay for itself without exposing some of the details like cycles, like saying to somebody, oh, your repository has X number of cycles and it's going to run out and you need to top them up. I'm not sure that is going to be the way to go, just because somebody who knows nothing about DFINITY or the IC might just want to host their code on CodeBase and they don't know what cycles are, and they probably shouldn't have to. but it has presented some interesting challenges because I'm trying to work with existing software, get clients that I don't control that work a certain way, and I'm managing to make it work with the Internet Computer. I don't know another project like this where it would work that way and be sort of the same level of decentralization. So that just makes a lot of sense to me, because if I was trying to use some other technology, I'd be doing some of it on the real platform and then some of it on some centralized service like Google or Amazon or something like that.
Uh-huh. Okay, and in your opinion, yeah, CodeBase, how do you see, or how you expected to see CodeBase in maybe 2, 3, 5 years? You think maybe it's like in 5 years, is that everybody like use GitHub or other repositories can change to CodeBase and start to use CodeBase like massively, or in 3 to
I
or
mean,
5 years? Or
that would be nice, I
this
think.
is a big milestone, but who knows, right? This is, yeah, in 3, 5 years is like long time, right? For people like realize what is the difference between Codebase and other like GitHub or whatever other repositories, right?
Yeah, it's a long time. It's almost hard to imagine where we'll be then, because things are moving so quickly, and not just for me, but the platform itself, and then just sort of broader technology. I'm sure it'll be not where I can anticipate things will be. But I can say that I want to make it easy for people to migrate stuff if they want to do that. And I think ultimately it's a choice, because in the beginning, I'm not going to have as many features as some of these other platforms, but to people that value decentralization, that's probably easier for them to make that trade-off. And the good thing is they don't have to, it's not like either or, they could use both. And then perhaps when CodeBase gets to certain features or to a point that they're pleased with, maybe they'll start using it more. But yeah, I'd love for more people to be using it and just to provide alternatives to these sort of monopolies that are out there. And just to, yeah, keep working on this. I'm enjoying doing it. And I'd love to just keep doing it for the next 5 years, I guess.
Yeah, wow, that's nice. Yeah, and you think in have like any partner in the future, someone or any company like from the maybe Internet Computer or from the ecosystem that maybe can help you to improve even more the platform, or you think just with the users and with the developers you can do go to Coinbase to a next level? Or maybe you think you need like someone like build a team or have like any collaboration or any agreement or partners to improve the platform? How you
Yeah,
did,
I
because
think,
you are only you now. Is you're alone, right, on the project, and it's pretty huge and it's pretty disruptive and yeah, maybe if you work like 24 hours, 7 days, you can do it, but it's tough, right?
yeah, I think I'm gonna need help. And I
Mhm.
I don't know, I kind of appreciate if you have smaller teams working on things, you can sometimes have better communication and you can sort of almost craft things a
True.
little bit better. And I'm definitely conscious of growing too quickly and sort of losing that. But yeah, I can't do this myself forever. I'm going to need some help. And thankfully, I've made some good friends along the way writing software, and maybe I can rope some of them in at some point or something like that, or make new friends. But there's the great thing about open internet services and projects on the IC are, they're almost designed, tailor-made to be plugged together. And I can say I've had a great experience so far with NFID and Identity Labs, and I picked that as the identity provider for CodeBase because it had very specific properties and values around privacy and user data, and the roadmap looks like it's a great fit for what I'm going to do. And that's been great to work with. I'd love as individual people sort of come my way or other projects come my way, and there's sort of like an obvious fit to sort of make the most of that. And I'm looking forward to finding out what those are as well.
Great. Awesome. Yeah, that's all. Thank you so much, Paul, yeah, for your time and for sharing with us the updates of CodeBase and to better understand how it works. I wish you the best for the project in the future. I think it's an amazing project and it's like have a lot of potential. And yeah, we need only like spread the word and like people needs to know how it works CodeBase and what is the difference between other platforms. Yeah, it's pretty cool, honestly. The rewards for the community just for participate, for contribute in the CodeBase. This is something pretty interesting. And yeah, thank you so much. Maybe Paul, next time when you have the demo, we can do a video or something, and you can show the community, the ICP community, and everybody how it works.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul. Bye bye.
Thanks.
See you. Thanks. Bye.